All right, we're going to call this meeting to order at 4:04. Thank you everyone who's here today. Marcia, if you'll start by calling the roll, please.
Right. Nikita Anderson, Amber Bowers. Here. Arlene Dodson, Terry England, Marcia Patel is here, Anthony Hopkins is absent today. Michelle Hopkins, Jaleesa Hutchins, Michael Campbell.
Here.
Ross Meyer.
Here.
Christy Phillips. Here. Laura Sandry. Here. Sally White Westheim.
All right, I don't think we have a quorum, which is fine. We're not going to be voting on anything tonight, but just one quick update from me for the board before we move on. We talked a lot in our last board meeting about working on getting things going and getting a meeting with CPS. And pleased to report we have a meeting set with them on Monday to kind of get going on things. So we'll keep everyone posted. Marcia, Shar, and I are going to be getting ready for that, but that is on the books, and we'll go from there and keep you all posted with more. We're gonna, the main purpose of today is the Year 6 evaluation reports. I think the board's pretty familiar with Dr. Mitchell and the team, but if you all want to get started, we're eager to hear the evaluation reports.
I'm just bringing you the magic clicker.
Good evening. It's great to see everybody. And I just want to first say that Innovations has been proud to serve as the evaluator for the last 5 years. We supported the evaluation in the first year. So it's meant to be somewhat interactive, so if you do have a question, please raise your hand. And definitely want this to be a discussion. So I think with the first slide, I want to introduce our team. So the persons on the top are those of us who really put together the report. Peter couldn't be here today, so I'm going to try to fill his very big shoes since he led the quantitative data analysis, and that'll be the first report that we'll discuss tonight. But I also have here Dr. Aubrey Culp, who will be presenting on the qualitative report, and Gianni, who will be presenting on special CPP plus and special programs. But many of our team members, we're really proud of our team. We've been working in the early childhood field for over 20 years, supported this really important initiative, and really just want to give credit to the whole team. Also wanted to acknowledge Crystal Kendrick from Voice of Your Customer, who helped to design the reports and provides valuable consultation to us, as well as Dr. Jennifer Williams, who supported the focus groups. So I want to give a really special recognition to our CPP Community Advisory Group. This is really the group that informs not only the evaluation, but larger CPP initiatives, because these are persons who represent really why CPP exists, and these are our parents and our teachers and our providers. And this group meets monthly too, and CPP is also represented on this group, but they're really instrumental to the work that we do, and I know the work of CPP. So you have these reports in front of you. I'm sure you don't have them electronically, you will. But these are the reports that we put together this year, and it's our quantitative report as well as our qualitative report. And if you go to the next slide, these are the table of contents in those reports. So these are comprehensive reports that reflect the important work that CPP does and the impact that CPP makes towards the community. We'll really focus on the orange highlighted areas, which are either the emerging trends of CPP, or some of the more innovative aspects of the evaluation for this year. And then really kind of simplifying the presentation for today. This is really what we'll cover, which are really beginning with the quantitative report and then shifting over to the qualitative report. And before I get started, context is very important. Not only just the context in which CPP was launched, which was understanding the importance of ensuring that every preschool child who needed access to quality preschool education had it, but also the context of most recently understanding that we've come through a pandemic over the past few years. And I wanted to just talk about some of the challenges and opportunities to early education before I got into the actual evaluation. So, having been a part of this evaluation for the past 6 years, we'll talk about that in just a second. And we know that since CPP, Cincinnati Preschool Promise, has made a really important impact towards its goals. But that being said, preschool enrollment declined sharply during the pandemic. That's been documented not only here in Cincinnati, but nationally. And we still are trying to recover from that, both in terms of enrollment and in a number of ways. Teacher shortages is one of the reasons why we're maybe having some difficulty. Preschools are having difficulty opening classrooms and filling their seats. And this is not just at the preschool level, but we're seeing this in education, K through 12, and even in some cases at the university level. So the other impact that we've seen from the pandemic is that we've seen academic and social emotional setbacks. With respect to preschool, we know that if a kid's not in preschool in ages 3 and 4, then it's going to be really difficult for them to be ready for school when they're at age 5. So, whether it's Cincinnati Public Schools or other school districts, when they're sharing out their data, they're showing that if you compare the outcomes before the pandemic compared to now, that we're seeing differences in academic performance, graduation rates, etc. And we're also seeing differences in school attendance that are likely a result of what, some of the cultural differences, whether it was virtual learning or parents maybe having some hesitancy in sending their kids to school because of illness or things like that. We're seeing some of that effect as well. So I just wanted to note that because I'll probably refer back to some of this data during the evaluation, but I also wanted to note it because in spite of some of these challenges, I will still be reporting a lot of positive and good news. And that's what I'm excited about today. So, on that note, please go to the next slide. So usually I present the outcomes at the very end, but today I thought I would share them twice. I'll share them at the beginning and I'll share them at the end. So this slide represents the outcomes and the impact that we've had over the first 6 years of the initiative. So these are our outcomes for years 1 through 6, and you can see that they are these are outstanding results for an initiative that launched in 2017. So today, we've impacted 1,898 preschoolers who've received Cincinnati Preschool Promise tuition assistance. And this has been through a partnership with CPP and CPS. We've actually had, this was just for this year. 1,898 just for this year, but overall we've had 9,500 preschoolers who've received this TA assistance through since 2017. So almost 10,000. We've added 99 high-quality tuition assistance providers to the network, so we're almost at the 100 mark. And we've had 103 QI providers who've been converted to tuition assistance TA. If you don't know what QI is, these are providers who are rated as 1 and 2 star. And we've had those providers now be 3, 4, or 5 star rated. And we've supported 372 teachers from 162 preschools with tuition promise grants and staff, or with the staff support fund. And then more than 1,499, let's just round it off and say 1,500 preschoolers have participated in extended learning sessions. So these are children who are going not only during the school year, but also during the summer. So they're going year round. And then just some other outcomes, which we'll talk about in more details, but we've consistently, meaning every year that we've tracked it, we've seen that those who are in quality rated preschool are doing better on their overall kindergarten readiness and their language and literacy compared to those who are not receiving tuition assistance. And the same thing on language and literacy, I may have said that. And then finally, we're also seeing this, that our preschoolers, we were able to track it for the first time, we're seeing that our preschoolers are actually doing better than kids, not only in Cincinnati, but across the state. So very excited to share the results. So now with that, we're gonna kind of slow it down a little bit. So if you wanna end up hitting the snooze button or going out, you've heard the highlights. And for those of us who wanna hear the details, then, sit back and relax. I'm gonna talk about what we accomplished this year in particular. So I'm gonna start with the kindergarten readiness and preschool progress results. And I'm going to start with the kindergarten readiness results. So kindergarten readiness, I think most of us know how we track this, but right now we're tracking it using the KRA-R. So this is the revised version of the previously used kindergarten readiness assessment, or the KRA. And we track it in 2 ways. One is we look at overall readiness. And there's 3 bands, so the emerging category is the lowest and the demonstrating is the highest, and approaching is in the middle. So I'll remind you of that again when we actually look at real data. The second way we track it is looking at language and literacy, and language and literacy is either on track or it's not on track. So the first thing I want to talk about is just the demographics of our CPP sample and our non-CPP sample, because this is really the basis of how we look at impact. And you can look at it here. So we have our CPP sample, which is comparable to our non-CPP sample in gender. You can look at the race comparisons, so more diversity in our CPP sample, which is expected, just given that we are serving children usually in quality gap neighborhoods, which tend to be more predominantly African American. And you can see the Hispanic population is a little higher in the non-CPP sample, but then when you look at income, you can see that that's more tilted towards the CPP sample. And again, that's because of the areas that CPP serves. Next slide. When we map out, when we look at income, again, I've talked about the proportion of the samples, but just want to talk about how we actually code SES. We code this using the community survey data, and it's based on several factors. So it's based on parent education, income, and other risk factors. There's 5 or 6 risk factors that go into the categorization of SES, and we use it, we geomap this, and that's how we produce this map here on the right. And SES 1 and 2 represents lower quartiles or areas of more risk, and SES 3 and 4 represent areas with fewer risks and greater access to resources, including higher economic status. And again, this will be important when we interpret the data. Go to the next slide. So this slide actually shows what factors go into the coding of social and economic status. So I'm just going to note it here. This is all noted in the report, and I'm sure you'll get a copy of these slides as well. But it is a very comprehensive measure of social and economic status, and it doesn't solely rely on income, which is great. All right, next slide. So next, we actually then run the analyses of our CPP TA sample, compare it with the non-CPP sample. And you can see that over the years, and with the current year highlighted on the right, we've consistently seen that the CPP sample has a higher percentage of children in those categories of approaching and emerging. And it's the bottom 2 categories, actually. It's the gray and the green. And the top category is where we want to see the fewest amount of kids, because that's the approaching category. That's the lower performing category. So you can see here, starting with 2018-19, all the way to current day is where we're seeing that the CPP sample has the distribution that we would want, again, with those bottom 2 having more kids and the top 1 having fewer kids compared to the comparison sample. And I'll talk a little bit more about the differences in just a second. We see the same pattern if you look on the next slide with language and literacy. This shows on track. Again, the bottom box is on track and the top box is not on track. So again, we would want to have the CPP TA kids have more kids in the bottom box compared to the top box, and we've seen that trend consistently. Now what you see in the last 2 slides is that the trends have gone down, meaning that we have less kids on track, and we have less kids, say, demonstrating or approaching. And part of that is due to what I mentioned in the first slide, is because of COVID. And because of some of the pandemic. And I'm going to come back to that slide when I talk about, wow, is this unique to Cincinnati? Is this unique to CPP? The answer is no, but I'm going to give you some data that shows that actually. All right, next slide. So, I'm sorry, can you back up just a second? Yeah. So in each of the slides, you can see that these differences were, significant. They were not only statistically significant, but it wasn't just by like 1 or 2 points. It was actually by, a lot of points to where when we ran tests of statistical significance, we could confidently say that CPPTA is making a difference. The program impact is making the difference. Okay. So now you can go to the next slide. So now if you just pull out the year 2022, 2023, we can kind of cut out all the noise, cut out the history for just a second. And now we can see, wow, for 2022, 2023, we're seeing that the difference is 8.8 points. And we can only just look at this year in isolation and say, wow, we're seeing a difference this year for the CPP tuition assistance kids compared to those kids who were not in the program. And we see that same impact when we just look at this year alone. And this is for overall overall kindergarten readiness. Okay, go to the next slide. We also see the same trend just for this year, and we see this for language and literacy, and we see that that difference is 7 points. So, you know, regardless of the fact that the trend has gone down, we understand that, yeah, it's gone down for both groups, but for both groups, when we look at both groups, we still see a differential impact for the CPP tuition assistance kids. So go to the next slide. Now when we look at income, we see a very interesting pattern. And it's a pattern we've seen before, but actually we see it, you know, we see it, I would say, you know, equally if not more dramatically this year. So for SES 1 and 2, we see that not only is that difference 8.8 points, but it's actually even greater for SES 1 and 2. We see that the difference is 22.7 points and 19.6 points respectively. Less so, if at all, for SES 3 and 4. And remember when I showed you how we calculate SES and the fact that SES 1 and 2 represent greater risks and SES 3 and 4 represent greater resources. Really the interpretation of these results is that CPP has greater impact for those children who have fewer resources or in lower resource areas. And less so for the SES 3 and 4 kids. And partly of why that is so is because there's fewer kids in SES 3 and 4. CPP doesn't necessarily, not as many kids qualify for CPP in SES 3 and 4. And also when you think about resources, these are kids who may have other ways of either getting early child care, education kinds of programs or things like that. So if you go to the next slide, we see a similar kind of pattern for language and literacy with similar kind of differentials. And I think, you know, just to put a little bit more data to it, the SES 1 and 2 families tend to be at, the SES 3 and 4 families tend to be at 300% of poverty, whereas the SES 1 families tend to be closer to 100% of poverty. You go to the next slide. When we look at race, we really try not to look at race independent of income, but people always ask us, so just want to keep that in context, that, you know, race independent of income is that race and income are highly correlated, especially in a city like Cincinnati, because a greater percentage of African Americans are in poverty compared to white populations, for example. But when we look at race, we see that there's a 15.3 percentage point difference among African Americans, 7.2 percentage point difference among Hispanic kindergartners, and 8-point difference among multiracial. We don't see that difference among white kindergartners. And if you go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about this result. We see the same pattern with language and literacy. You see there 17.2, 4.5, 3.3 respective differences among African American, Hispanic, and multiracial. We don't see that difference among white. And again, for the same reason that poverty and race is correlated for Black African American, it's the same reason why it's not as correlated for white. So white kindergartners generally scored higher, but the relationship between CPP, TA, and non-CPP was reversed. And the poverty levels for white families across Cincinnati was 21.4% living in poverty, which is much lower than what it would be for blacks. And this is according to the 2021 American Community Survey. So for blacks, that number is 56%, much higher. For Hispanics, that number is 44%, much higher, as an example. So this is one of my favorite slides because this is a wow. Look at the impact of CPP slide. So this slide is an overview of the predictive qualities of CPP based on a logistic regression analysis that Peter performed. And what it shows is that CPP, tuition assistance, was statistically significant predictor of kindergarten readiness. And this is when you control for gender, race, and SES. So we controlled for all those factors that we just talked about. And even when we did, CPP was significant. So CPP increased the odds of demonstrating readiness by 42%. This is for overall kindergarten readiness, and increased the odds of being on track for literacy by 85.9%. So this is really important. So when you get your report, put an asterisk by this page. And then it actually was more predictive this year than it was last year, potentially because of the fact that as kindergarten readiness did go down overall, for the overall non-CPP sample, it made the prediction of those with preschool even more predictive. So next slide. This is another new analysis that we did, which was looking at residential mobility. And this will be for the next 2 slides, and there's been growing interest in really looking at mobility's impact. So this was something that we really wanted to do in collaboration with CPP. And what we actually see here, so in this analysis, first of all, mobility is defined as a family moving from a different residential zip code 1 or more times over the course of preschool and kindergarten enrollment. So, and then out of the 654 CPP-TA participants with KRA scores, 19.6% experienced mobility. And mobility rates were highest among Hispanic kindergartners with 25% experience in mobility, 21% of Black or African Americans experienced mobility, and then 13.3% multiracial. And this is compared with 9.5% for white. And then what you see here from the data is that those who were mobile had lower kindergarten readiness scores with 64% readiness compared to those who were non-mobile who had 68%. So there was about a 4-point differential. So not a lot, but again, we were looking at a pretty short period of time of only maybe 1 or 2, in some cases 3 years. And let me look at the language and literacy results, and then I'll just talk about what this all means. Language and literacy, same thing. We saw about a 4-point differential. So those who were non-mobile, 45.2% on track. Those who were mobile, 41.4% on track. So again, that 4-point differential. And really some next steps, I would recommend continuing to track these results or look at mobility. Because I believe as we look at this data longer term, we will continue to see differences in those students who are mobile and those who are non-mobile. And then we only looked at mobility at the zip code level. We didn't look at it at the actual residential address level. So we didn't track if someone moved from, say, one street to another within Avondale or 45229. And we would have had more highly sensitive results had we done that. We also didn't look at school mobility. We did an analysis in 2008 where we looked at the micro level on mobility, and we found that, you know, even if a child is staying at the same house, but they're changing schools 2 and 3 times, that actually can relate to some outcomes too. So this is another new analysis that we're so excited to share today. And this is where we looked at the CPP TA participants, and we compared them to kindergartners in 5 of the largest school districts in Ohio. And they outperformed them all. So not only did they outperform the non-CPP in the total district in Cincinnati, but also students in Columbus, Southwest, Cleveland, Akron, and Toledo city schools. So this is really good, this is really impressive. And I want to get back to the discussion that I had on COVID, which is that every single one of these school districts showed very similar trends to what we're seeing. Certainly in Ohio, we haven't taken this to a national level or looked at, there's 2 other states, I believe, who are using the KRAR, but very similar trends in terms of post-COVID performances on the KRAR as what we're seeing in Cincinnati. So this is not a function of CPS, this is not a function of CPP, this is much larger than, you know, than us. This is the pandemic. What we're going to see from the pandemic is going to be with us for a while. And from what I saw from the predictive analyses, it's showing that preschool is one of the potential buffers to how we're going to address some of the effects of the preschool pandemic, for preschool children. So same thing with language and literacy. Again, you can see the bar.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I see a question. Shar, do you have a question?
Well, it's more of a comment than a question. Just to let you know that we will also be coordinating with 4 of those cities who also have preschool initiatives that are funded in different ways. And we all kind of work together on the Ohio preschool initiatives to continue to do an ongoing analysis, not only of how it's funded, differences in the KRA score, but as Dr. Mitchell said, the things that are impacting how we're doing funding, what the structure of each one of those programs are, so we continue to see the benefits of how that investment pays off, not only here, but in our sister cities as well.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you. I love this graph. I love textbook graphs. It's lovely when data turns out the way it should. We can't make it do that, but it's great when it does that. And this is one of those textbook graphs. So the graph on the left is the CPPTA, and you want the bar at the bottom, which is on track, to be higher than all the other graphs. And it is, which is good. So it's higher than every other bar, which is the bar for the non-CPP participants, the bar for the district, and the bar for all the other 5 districts. So that's kind of what we would hope for. Next slide. All right, so this is another new analysis, if you go to the next slide, that we did, that we're really excited about, because guess what? Our initial cohort's in 3rd grade. Yay, we should give an applause for that. So I'm a data nerd, but every now and then I get really, and I try to be as, formal as possible, and if Peter were up here, he'd be keeping a straight face if you know him. But this makes me really excited that the CPP participants are in 3rd grade. And we're able to, as of 2021, 2022. So we actually had another group that was in 3rd grade last year that we'll tell you about next year. But this group, we followed them, or we found them. we know how they did in 3rd grade. We actually found 273 of them. And they are It's a slight difference, but it's an important difference between those who were in CPPTA and the district average. So it's about a 2-point difference. And remember that these are kids who, we saw the demographics from before. We know that these kids are more likely to be lower income. They're more likely to be diverse demographically. So that being said, we're just going to continue to track these cohorts and see how they do. Next slide. So preschool progress, we look at with the TS Gold, and these are a combination of both community and CPS preschoolers. And so the TS Gold documents a preschooler's development as below, meeting or exceeding expectations along 6 dimensions. And you see these dimensions listed here, including social, emotional, language, some of the same things we track in kindergarten, but a little bit more comprehensive. And we can look at the data on the next slide. So you can see here how the students rate in the fall. We get their assessments in the fall, and then we get their assessments in the spring. And you can see that on each of the 6 domains, we are able to see progress in, of anywhere from 8 to, about 15, 16 points. So we get this data from 37 providers, and this continues to be an area that we want to grow, the number of providers who are reporting the preschool progress data. We've made a lot of progress actually in what we call building our preschool data warehouse. So this is, I believe, our 4th or 5th cohort where we're getting this data. But again, it's really about building the capacity of providers to report this data to us.
Did the providers get this information back?
We get this right now from CPS and from CPS and from some community providers, but we want to, and from a few other providers, but we really need to get this more broadly.
But do they get, so if you're a provider and you're participating, are you able to see your data? Like, do they get that feedback so that they're able to see the progress that they're making individually, or is it?
They know that, yeah, they know.
Okay.
It's within that program.
It's within the
That's
program.
where these children are tracked.
Okay.
You get, the parents get, it provides reports. So, but everybody who uses TS Gold gets, knows their improvement.
Yeah, where the opportunity is there's some programs that aren't on TS Gold who either need another way to track the kids' progress, and they're still trying to figure out how to track their kids' progress.
Well, and I want to make sure it's clarified, not all of CPS uses TS Gold.
No, they
Only our
don't.
Head Start.
Only the Head Start programs, correct.
So that is not representing all of CPS
No,
preschools.
it doesn't.
Head Start classrooms.
Yeah, and there have been some years, not this year, where we got data straight from CPS. What was the name? The ELA data.
ELA.
We got the ELA data, yes.
And nor does it represent all community providers, because they have
Yes.
a source of which curricula to use.
Correct.
Part of what we do in our network and connecting providers is similar to this briefing session that we do for the board and the community. There is a closed session briefing for providers, so they can see and ask questions about all these results. And that's an opportunity for offer peer support and encouragement to use this type of assessment in their site, so they have access to this type of data and can tell the impact. And sometimes it is not, we don't call it peer pressure, we call it peer support and encouragement that we do in those briefing sessions as well.
Any other questions about preschool progress?
Monica, can I just ask if there is one correlation? Because this is beautiful data.
Yes.
I just want to give it back to you for that.
Yes.
But I'm looking at the literacy, and when we look at the TS Gold, we showed growth and we ended at 86.9, $1 less. but then when you transfer it to the cross scores, we take a pretty big drop. So
Yes.
has there ever been a correlation between, I'm just asking because I don't know, TS goal and the CRA to see where we're missing the boat a little bit?
We haven't done that in a long time. We've done it with the ELA before. Back when we used to use Bracken, we did it with that. We haven't done it with TS Gold. And I think it's just a difference in how this assessment is used. I agree.
And I think they also revised it's now KRA-R. I mean, that test has been revised. So maybe that's something future.
You're exactly right. And I forgot to mention that. So the KRA-R that we use now, we've only been using that for 2 years. So that's a little bit of confound in terms of seeing the drop, because before the pandemic, we used the KRA. So, you know, some of it is that we probably are seeing a drop. We don't know how much of it is the drop versus how much of it is the measure. We just don't know, so. Because it's measurement difference too there. But it wouldn't be hard for us to take, because we know which kids, we have their data from here to.
Will you use the microphone?
I think it's a good question in terms of when we have kids' data at preschool progress and then they go onto the KRA to see what the correlation is. It's not a hard thing to do.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other questions about preschool progress? Yes. Or KRA.
Thank you, Monica. I
Yes.
just want to make sure that they are comparable measures, the two are comparable.
They're measuring similar things,
Okay,
but the comparability we won't know until we do that correlation.
okay.
Like I said, some of us have been around long enough to where we remember when we did the Bracken. The correlation between those two measures was very high, very predictive. I think I won't even say it was like 0.88 or something. But we don't know.
I think we also may see some developments as we look to what we know is happening with the merger for the new Office of Children and Youth. And we know at one time that there were certain standards that were ODJFS standards and certain standards that were ODE. We know in the last 2 years, the early learning standards were revised a couple of times, which is why 2 years ago, when looking at these measures, we said we needed more than the KRA-R, the KRA-L, or the KRA to tell what progress is, right? And so while we can look at these and the compatibility and how they may cross, I just want everyone to be aware, we're also looking at all of the things and the ways that we measure, which is why we allow to permit a variety of assessments and curricula that drive at the end of the day, not only those standardized test scores, but the things that we know recommended by NACE that most early educators follow that are developmentally appropriate practices that measure not only literacy, that measure not only math, but measure social emotional learning and other gains, so that we tell not only is a child on track or kindergarten ready, when we say that in the early learning community, what we mean is someone developmentally on track, not just the KRAs.
So we're measuring more holistically.
Yes,
Okay,
whole child, whole family.
okay.
And then I did want to just clarify one thing, that just because a child is making progress doesn't mean that they're, quote, ready. So if they start here and they end here, they've made progress, even though they might need to be here.
Right.
Any other questions? This is really good.
Monica?
Yes.
So I got a question that might be a newbie question.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand the two groups, right? So CPPTA, does that include CPS preschoolers? No, those are just supported directly through our CPP. I know this is a can of worms, but CPP and TA numbers.
So it depends on what measure we're talking about,
Okay.
right? So in most cases, when it is just those that are supported in the community provider setting, we will specifically say community provider, right? But if you're looking at this at the KRA results,
Yeah.
those are all students that are both from community provider and CPS classrooms
Yes.
who receive levy dollars for
That's
tuition
what I, okay,
assistance.
all right, that's
It's
what I-
both.
Yeah.
It is both.
And then the non-CPP are all other
They are.
CPS kindergartners, right? Even though they're not, the two groups are not demographically comparable.
They're all other, and they're, yes, they're, I'm not gonna say they're not comparable, I would just say that they're different. That's, I hope, yeah, they're different, yeah.
I mean, but different in important ways.
Different in
Ways
important
that matter-
ways.
That matter.
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that it, I mean, it would seem though that the CPP impact could be understated.
It could be
because
understated,
they're
yes.
into a more advantaged group.
Absolutely.
Right?
Wait
And-
for your board member.
Right?
No, that's fair to say,
I'm following along.
that's fair to say.
Okay.
Any other questions? Because this is the first break for questions. So any other questions before I move on to the next part of the presentation?
I have one.
Yes.
Is there data you don't get that if you received would help us better evaluate the impact of the program?
Yes, preschool progress data, more preschool progress data. That's something that we've been working on, but the capacity of more programs to report it is limited.
Can I
Yes.
follow up to that?
Mhm.
So if you had more programs that use TS Gold, is that what you're looking for?
It doesn't have to be TS Gold, it really doesn't, but it needs to be something that they can, that is reliable for them to, yes.
As we know, that's one of the few reliable.
We recommended one of three measures. We recommended either TS Gold, ELA, or Bracken. Some programs still use Bracken, they can report that. It doesn't matter. Or a fourth measure that is reliable and trackable of their choice. Yes. It could be in a spreadsheet, it could be in a table, it could be in a web system, yes. And we really need that. That would be the top priority right now. Okay. All right. So next we're going to talk about reach and access. Again, this is Peter's work. And he's on a well-deserved vacation, so I'm going to present this for Peter. And I only have 5 minutes, but I'm going to take 10. Okay. So we've worked really hard with CPP, 4C, CPS, ODJFS. I'm sure I'm United Way. I'm sure I'm missing some people. Shara, who else? Learning Grove, and many others to work on a new quality gap neighborhood analysis. And it was conducted in December 22 to reevaluate high quality preschool access. This was an updated report that RAND did in 2016, and it really looks at areas that are high and low in quality based on 2 factors. So socioeconomic risk factors and also the supply of high quality seats. And this measure is really intended to be used to help decision makers prioritize Cincinnati neighborhoods that are in most immediate need of resources pertaining to high quality preschool access. So if you can go to the next slide. So these are like I said, there's 2 criteria. So you can see the criteria here. So we estimated the total quality seat capacity and compared it to the estimate of the preschool population. And we flagged neighborhoods as low supply if they met 1 or 2 criteria. Either they have a seat deficit of 100 seats or more, or they have a seat-to-child ratio less than the citywide rate. And the citywide rate is 0.6 or 3 seats per 5 children. The second criteria is neighborhood risk factors, and the risk classifications were based on 5 key indicators. And you see them here. Median family income, single-parent households, adult population with high school education, unemployment rate, violent or property crime rates. So this is a very careful analysis, in addition to the partners that I named. I also, I know Peter used the 2021 American Community Survey data, and he did a very detailed and careful analysis of this. So you can go to the map. So this is the map that he produced, and the grid, the matrix essentially, that produced these 4 categories of either at risk, low supply, all the way to low risk, or above average supply. Really, it's the orange areas that define the quality gap neighborhoods. And so the primary focus is really the dark orange areas on the map. These are at-risk, low supply, or quality gap neighborhoods that are most in need of additional high-quality preschool seats. And then the other classifications are shown for additional context. So, and you'll see that it's some slight shifts from the RAND 2016 study, and it really just incorporates the new knowledge that we have, and also the work that's been done by CPP to address previous gap neighborhoods. And happy to give some examples of that, but for the sake of time, there were some gaps that have been addressed and are now are reflected in other colors. So this will be important context when I talk about the next section of the report, which is the reach that CPP has had to the community provider network. And you'll see that I'll reference quality gap neighborhoods. So this is the last part of my report. So first I'm going to talk about this chart, which shows the enrollment for tuition-assisted preschoolers at community-based providers. And you can see that the numbers receiving tuition assistance increased from 907 to 927. So this is an increase of 2.2%. And you can see we're starting to recover a little bit after COVID, which is positive. Next slide. So this is the provider network here, and this is providers who are 3, 4, 5-star rated by Ohio's Step Up to Quality Child Care rating. And this chart shows the community-based TA provider networks over the years. So you can see over the years it's grown more than 300%. And this year we've kind of leveled off here, with it being 137. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So this chart provides another look at that TA network, and you can see as of 2023, 64 of the 137 providers are in quality gap neighborhoods. Again, we shifted the definition of quality gap, so that's part of the reason. Had we continued with the same definition, we would have actually been at 75, so it would have leveled off. But the same definition it's not appropriate to keep the same definition, because some of those neighborhoods are really, they already have they're either lower risk or they're at adequate supply. So really shifting to this definition makes more sense. And then the net difference shows continuous growth, and really you can see we're begun to level off with the 139 to 137. And part of the reason why we're leveling off is because we are shifting. The QI providers are moving to TA, but initially we had a lot of QI providers that we were converting to TA. Now the pool of QI providers is a network that we need to continue to invest in, and that conversion rate is not as high as it was, because the pool is not 100 anymore. It's smaller now. So the percentage of conversion is going to be much lower. So, and you'll see that again. I'm going to show that the QI network in just a second. So if you look at the next map, you can see here the map of all the CPP community-based TA providers that are active, which is indicated by the blue marks on the map. And you can also show where providers are concentrated in the quality gap neighborhoods or surrounding neighborhoods. And the CPS boundary is included on the footprint, which is in the purple boundary. So, I mean, this is the work of CPP, and you can see that that work is, you know, it's been a lot of work to put all these dots on the map. Okay. Go to the next slide. And this is really where the quality improvement providers are either unrated or have 1 or 2 quality stars. So this is really the other part of that equation in the pipeline for TA. So again, you know, at the height where there was 135, and then now we're at 75. So these QI providers receive support and coaching from CPP to improve quality, increase high-quality preschool seat capacity in the CPP network. And the chart shows the community-based QI provider network over the years. So, you know, initially, again, you'll see a second, that conversion of TA. Now we're at 75, and there needs to be continued investment in support of QI, because QI is really the pipeline for the TA providers that's needed to provide quality childcare in neighborhoods, including quality gap neighborhoods. Okay, go to the next slide. So these are the conversion rates total converted. So you can see each year anywhere from 10 to 25, with those heavy years being in the middle when we had a lot of centers in the QI. There were a lot of QI providers. We converted 12 this year, and but we still have 75 in the network who could potentially be converted in future years. And there's still, let's see, in quality gap neighborhoods, we still have 12 in quality gap neighborhoods. Okay, go to the next slide. And these are some of my favorite slides. I don't know what's going on. Oh, there it is. Go to the last one. Yeah, something happened with that one. Okay, go to the next one. Okay, so this is my new favorite slide, where we now have 204. So this map shows us the community-based network as of year 6 and illustrates the growth of the network. The previous slide would have showed you 66 in the first year. Now we're at 204, and it also shows it in the new quality gap neighborhoods too. So you can see the new quality gap neighborhoods. It was orange on that one side, but now it's yellow. So you can see the opportunity now to populate the quality gap neighborhoods, the new quality gap neighborhoods. All right. So this is this slide shows the number of providers and seats in quality gap neighborhoods, and you can see that really it kind of walks you through the current number of providers being 204. Just saw that on the map. The total preschool seats reported, the number of providers, but then the total seats in quality gap neighborhoods. So you can see in quality gap neighborhoods is where it drops off dramatically, and where we really need to think about how are we going to get more seats in quality gap neighborhoods. And if you look back at the map, I mean, that's on the west side where it's very densely populated as well. So yeah, go back to the next, yeah, right there. So yeah, so that's where, whereas we have 39, 35 overall, 17, 95 are in the yellow. And just, again, it's going to be really important to invest in QI as well as TA. Okay. And then finally, this map shows all high quality providers in the footprint, including CPP, TA preschools, CPS preschools. So the CPP preschools are in blue, the CPS preschools are in red, and then other 3 to 5 star preschools are in green. So the total number being 201. And CPPTA, community-based preschools, and CPS preschools together make up 88.6% of the 3 to 5 star providers in Cincinnati. And this ends my presentation, but I want to open up for any questions and see if Shar wants to add anything. Any other questions about either reach and access or the provider network? Yes.
Just to clarify in my mind, I probably already know the answer. So we're looking at the map and the gaps. Those are just provider data. It does not include CPS at all in that map.
The one that includes, yes, the numbers. Yes, the numbers. The only one that included CPS is the last one that I showed that had the this right here. And where I said that between CPS and CPP, they account for about 89% of the providers, the high quality providers. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Martha, because I like visuals,
Good.
virtual person. So just so I can understand, when you said we decreased in QI, which is not bad, but we need to get other people
Yes.
on track to start the process to get into TA.
Yes.
Okay,
Correct.
so that's
Yes.
where that gap is.
Yes.
We need to add more providers to buy into this.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that pipeline is just so important. So into the QI network, QI to TA, and then of course making sure that TA providers stay rated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I do want to add something. I try to hold it, but I really can't.
Go ahead.
The other thing I would also say is we should always remember that the maps that you see and what you see for Preschool Promise is a slice of what the overall network is, because not every provider that exists in this footprint is a part of the Cincinnati Preschool Promise. They've either chosen not to work with us because they may not accept our requirements to accept publicly funded childcare children. Our reimbursement rates may be too low for them. There are a variety of reasons. So we will continue to do that outreach and work. And the thing I have to always remind people of is when you look at these numbers, keep in mind it is capacity, not actual licensure capacity. And with the pandemic and staffing shortages, we know that everybody is operating far below capacity. So we have to over-deliver just so we can break even, right?
Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to hand off to John.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. So my name is Gihani Isaacs, and I'm going to use the next few slides to talk about our CPP Plus programs, which are listed here. Can y'all hear me okay? Peanut butter and jam, or PB&J, as I will be saying, and extended learning sessions, or ELS. All right, so first of all, I want to highlight the undergraduate student research project that we've had this year and last year. This was done by Grace Elliott, who is a UC student and also a CCHMC intern. So this is the second year she's done research on measuring the impact of music programming on preschoolers' development. And we wanted to give a quick thanks to Grace for her continued work. All right, so now moving on to the first CPP Plus program, PB&J. And as you may know, this is an interactive music program for preschoolers to learn through singing, dancing, and musical instruments. So you can see the stats over here on the top. So there were 10 preschool sites who received this programming, and a total of 131 preschoolers participated in programming. Teachers and providers were surveyed, and they said, 87.3% of them said that preschoolers who attended the programming showed improvement in observed behaviors across all domains of measurement related to the TS goal, which we talked about earlier. The domains are listed on the bottom there. Okay. So this slide presents our analysis of PB&J participants and their TS Gold assessment scores. As we mentioned earlier, TS Gold assessments measure preschool progress, And on this chart, the domains are listed on the left in the blue, and on the far right in yellow, that's the percent improved per domain based on our data. And you will see that social, emotional, and language were the highest improvement. I wanted to note that the data presented in this table included PB&J participants who had both pre and post, as you can see in the middle two columns, assessments. And one piece of our analysis is that preschoolers attending the program made improvements from fall to spring in all 6 domains, which I mentioned already. And also that more than 90% of participants met or exceeded expectations in the pre-test, as you can see there. Okay, so this slide highlights some of the feedback, the qualitative feedback we received from PB&J, about PB&J. I want to highlight the first quote. This was said by a CPP provider, and they noted that PB&J sessions have introduced our children to the different uses of instruments, how to express languages through music and movements, use of gross and fine motor skills, how to listen and follow directions, and take turns sharing. I thought that was pretty powerful. All right, on to the next CPP Plus program, which was ELS. So ELS was offered by CPS during June 2022 and August 2022. That's what the data here focuses on. Quick note about eligibility for ELS. Preschoolers who were enrolled and active at a CPP TA provider during the prior academic year were eligible to participate in ELS. So take a look at the map on the right. The yellow tags, I'm not sure if you can see it, but the yellow tags represent active ELS providers. And there were 89 ELS provider locations on this map. The blue dots represent ELS actually ELS preschoolers who live, and where they lived in 2021, 2022. So there were 498, you can see in the blue, the very bottom bullet point, 498 children enrolled in the ELS program in summer 2022. And this is a 2.2 increase from the prior year. All right, so we're going to dig deeper into ELS participation and performance. The next 3 slides present analysis on overall KRAR performance results on both ELS participants and non-ELS participants. So a quick note about the cohorts. ELS cohort included those who participated in ELS and who had a completed KRAR assessment. And then the other cohort was the non-ELS students. So, orienting you to this graph right here, we are looking at performance data, as I mentioned, KRAR, and it's broken down by SES, socioeconomic status. And you can see there's the SES 1 through 4, with 1 being the highest risk area and 4 the lowest. We also overlaid attendance data, and this was whether a participant attended 90% or less of their scheduled days, or greater than or equal to 90% of their scheduled days. So the one piece I want to highlight in this graph is that first block on the left. This is the SES1 group. The SES1 group. And I also want to highlight those who attended within the SES1, those who attended 90% or more. So this group showed more favorable overall performance compared to non-ELS participants. That was a lot of explanation, but basically ELS participants in SES1 who attended more than 90% scored more favorably than non-ELS. So, yes, and in blue up on the second bullet point, we have the percentages. All right, so this graph takes out the SES component and looks at overall KRAR performance broken down by participation and the percent of scheduled days attended. So overall, ELS participants had stronger KRAR results than their non-ELS counterparts. So you can see the data, the 72.4 and the 69.8 in blue, that's the data, the difference in percentage points. And take a look at the second two graphs. I mean, the bars in the graph, the combined demonstrating and approaching green sections, that's what we're looking at when we're looking at comparison between ELS who attended 90% more or ELS who attended 90% or less. And feel free to stop me if you have any questions. It's a lot of data. Okay, so this final graph looks at performance, the KRAR, broken down by only participation, whether they were non-ELS or ELS. We took out SES when we took out attendance. So note that the ELS cohort, I noted this actually already, we have a note about sample size. It's the note that the ELS participants are those who had parental consent and a complete score of KRAR, and the sample sizes are included in there. The results show that 60.2% ELS participants had approaching and demonstrating versus 69.8% non-ELS who are approaching and demonstrating. And we believe there are other factors that we haven't measured yet that could be impacting the performance of ELS participants. That's viewed here. And these other factors that Dr. Mitchell talked about already include the continued impact of COVID-19, also like the shorter programming days in the summer, other reasons that families may want to enroll in ELS, preschool progress, etc. So we need to do more research on that. All right, so this is a summary of our ELS results that I just reviewed. ELS preschoolers and providers, their participation has increased each year. The data shows that ELS participants were most beneficial to preschoolers within the SES1 and greater than 90% attendance, that first graph that we looked. Finally, we included a note about the 2023 ELS participants this summer. There were 532 participants who were enrolled, and these results will be reported in the Year 7 evaluation because we will need the fall 2023 KRAR results. So, that is my short section. Any questions? All right, I will hand it over to Dr. Culp to talk about the qualitative piece.
Thanks everybody for your attention so far. This is the last section of the report, and it's going to focus on the qualitative evaluation. And this really puts in all of these numbers that we have been listening to for the past hour into the perspective through the lens of CPPs, parents, teachers, and providers. So I'll be showing the feedback that we received through those focus groups and surveys. The focus groups allow us to gather those important insights from stakeholders to ensure that their voice is reflected in our evaluation, and then that survey allows us to kind of quantify their feedback. So here is an overview of some of the insights from parents, teachers, and providers' feedback that we're going to explore more in the following slides. But one that I did want to point out was this first point, and that is that the parents said that the tuition assistance funds were so essential to their ability to access preschool for their child, with 90% of them reporting that they couldn't afford any or only some of the cost of preschool without having received Cincinnati Preschool Promise tuition assistance. And this slide captures a few of the many positive statements that parents made about their CPP experience. In that first section regarding CPP increasing preschool access, one parent said that CPP has helped me pay for preschool. It also allows my provider to purchase learning materials that I will receive for my child to work on at home. These activities allow me to participate in her learning. The children go on so many outings with little or no cost to me. Teachers and providers also provided a lot of positive feedback about CPP, and these comments are just about how instrumental the CPP has been in improving program quality and sustainability for those that participate with one of the providers saying that CPP covers beneficial trainings, coaching, and provides teacher incentives that add value to my program and the children and families I serve. My communication has been great with the CPP staff. And another said that they held our hand through the quality improvement process and would step up to quality. They helped us get our 5 stars. They made the process so understandable and manageable. Now I want to talk about teacher and provider supports, specifically those at tuition assistance preschools. So these are the teacher promise grants, and this is a way that CPP helps to supplement teacher wages and retention. This year, 120 lead teachers received the grant, and the program saw a 95% retention rate. We learned through surveys that nearly a quarter of teacher promise grant recipients agreed that the grant had an impact on them staying with their employer. And you'll notice from this slide that the percent of respondents agreeing with that has kind of declined since last year, but that's likely due to these unfortunate changes in the economy and inflation that we're seeing impacting our children and families and providers. But anecdotally speaking, we did hear from the grant recipients that they very much value the support, and it is used to increase their wages. So looking forward, we know that we want to expand our evaluation to make sure that we're able to talk and hear from all of the grant recipients, to hear about any other challenges or opportunities that there may be to support teachers and providers. This slide looks at the teacher and provider supports at quality improvement preschools, specifically the staff support funds, which CPP offers to help quality improvement preschool providers recruit and retain quality staff. CPP supported 29 staff positions at 14 quality improvement preschools this year. They shared that they also use these funds to increase wages and fund professional development opportunities for their staff. The next couple of slides are about social emotional health and learning, which are important for preschoolers because research shows that children's social emotional health in preschool is connected to their overall development, learning, and academic performance. We also know that parents and teachers play a crucial role in children's development of social emotional health, and this is fostered through intentional teaching. And because of its importance, and because we've heard parents say for the past 3 years that social emotional learning is an aspect of quality preschool that they highly value, we took a closer look at the ways that parents and teachers help children develop social emotional skills. So here in that first kind of orange box, we see how often that tuition assistance parents reported that they're teaching their children about emotions and managing them, with 93.1% reporting that they're doing this more than once a day or about once per day. In the middle, we also are seeing from the perspective of TA teachers and providers that 84.2% of them agree that they have the necessary support and resources to effectively teach social emotional skills in the classroom. However, during our focus groups, which is in this green part here at the end, the teachers and providers said that they still need support around social emotional learning related to more training and coaching and classroom materials, particularly around teaching coping skills, conflict resolution, emotion management, and assessing the impact of the child's home environment on their learning and development at school. This slide looks at social emotional practices in the classroom, where 67.3% of surveyed TA teachers and providers reported that they're integrating social emotional learning into the academic lesson plans and in their classroom always or daily. And during our focus groups, the top 3 rated classroom practices were program activities, which included breathing techniques and dramatic play, teacher-led strategies like modeling appropriate behaviors, and the classroom environment setup, which included things like feelings charts and books, among other practices. Parent involvement and child-led practices were also mentioned, but were endorsed less frequently. Another new element of this year's evaluation was to understand special needs and referrals within the CPP Community Provider Network. First, focusing on the left-hand side of the screen, we see that 38 to 46% of TA and QI teachers and providers said that they're serving preschoolers with special needs who require special education services and support. And some of these teachers and providers weren't sure if their preschoolers had special needs, and that's possibly because children are still being diagnosed at this early age. We also see that at least 25 to 50% of teachers and providers said that they still need help with service referrals for their preschoolers with special needs. And now looking on the right-hand side, this is the parent feedback. According to those that were able to take this survey, 13 to 21% of them reported that they have a child with special needs and that only some of their needs are currently being met. There's some other points on this slide, but in summary, it's still unclear to us from the feedback that we received if providers and parents have been successful with their referral submissions and if they're receiving the needed services or what other types of services are needed. But I wanted to point out here on this slide, this is some more quotes from our focus groups and surveys that we also heard from parents, teachers, and providers about the types of supports and resources that they need to meet the needs of their preschoolers with special needs. And teachers and providers expressed the need for a liaison between wraparound services and support from the child's school district, as well as resources for parents and training, particularly around autism and behavior management, which were mentioned most frequently. And then on the right, parents shared that their child has various needs related to autism, speech, and developmental delays. They voiced concerns about their child's readiness for preschool and being able to trust in preschools to be able to properly care for their child, as well as really valuing and finding it important that the preschool setting in which their child would be in is able to give their child that one-on-one time and attention. So we recognize that this is, again, another area where we need to continue to look at the needs of children, the referrals that are happening, and how we can best serve those with special needs. I'm going to try to go quickly here to stay on time. So next I wanted to talk about parent engagement in school. So I wanted to see how parents are engaged. So the figure on the left looks at relationship building with teachers and providers among parents. The blue bars are showing responses that were very often. Orange are those that responded sometimes, and just overall we're seeing that the majority of parents are frequently talking to their child's preschool teacher or provider about their child's education, their development, and they're participating in school activities, and those specific types of activities are that figure on the right. And these are all encouraging results to see because we know that research shows that parent engagement is a strong predictor of how well a child does later on in school. Next up, the CPP preschooler survey. So this is the second year that teachers surveyed their preschoolers about their school experience. The preschoolers' overall sense of school was very positive, with 90% or more saying that school teaches them to take turns, to be nice, and that they feel safe at school. Teachers also asked preschoolers to share their favorite thing about coming to school, and one of them said, I learned to write, I eat good food, seeing their dance teachers, finding their name letters, going outside, and when they have number parties. So they're doing lots of fun things. And so these positive experiences, connections made during preschool are important because they can help children be successful with developing positive connections with their peers and teachers when they go to kindergarten, which are also important for their continued learning and development. And lastly, moving on to the satisfaction. This is the parent satisfaction slide where we're seeing that parents are highly satisfied with the application process, preschool center options, tuition assistance, and provider communication. Especially in that provider communication category, we saw a 23.2 percentage point increase from the last year. Some new areas of parent satisfaction assessed on this year's survey are in gray, and we're seeing a high percentage of parents reporting satisfaction with the opportunities that they have for education and training, as well as opportunities to connect with other parents of preschoolers in the network. Regarding teacher and provider satisfaction, the figure on the left is for tuition assistance teachers and providers. Their highest area of satisfaction was professional development. On the right, we see that 68.2% of quality improvement teachers and providers are satisfied with their professional development, learning materials, and coaching received from CPP. And here we have some quotes that just further support what we've seen about teachers and providers' satisfaction with CPP. In the yellow, one provider said, "I feel that CPP is a blessing to my program. CPP has provided many resources, coaching opportunities, training, and funding through the TA program to enhance the quality of my program. This is a direct benefit to the children and families in which we serve." And another said, "Preschool Promise sends our children backpacks with materials to help them be able to keep up with activities at home with parents. CPP supports us with different types of books and programs to help children and teachers increase their social and emotional literacy and skills. Without the financial assistance and tuition assistance from CPP, my small business would probably be closed." So there's a lot more quotes from CPP's stakeholders in the qualitative report. I hope you all will take one of those with you and read those and see just how much that CPP's hard work and dedication to supporting preschools is benefiting teachers, providers, preschoolers, and their families. With that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Mitchell to wrap us up.
We hope we get the word out. Shar, as always, thank you for your partnership.
Thank you. Well, I don't even think we need to take a vote to adjourn since we didn't have quorum and didn't even have a full meeting. So. Thank you, board members, for doing double duty this month and coming 2 weeks in a row for a few hours. Appreciate it. And guests as well. And we'll be back together October 24th. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all.